Hey everyone, Dave Powers here answering your benzo questions. Let's dive in here. Question number 1, can you give us a recovery timeline? Difficult question to answer because, of course, recovery depends on a lot of factors. How long you've been taking the drug. What dosage were you at? What was your pre-existing condition, the reason you started taking the drug in the first place? Do you have a support group? What's your age? What's your health like? Do you have any disabilities? Are you very active physically? Are you able to be active? That helps a lot when you can exercise. There's a number of factors, but let me give you a basis for my experience. Was I took it for 6 or 7 years, Valium, that is, and it took me about a year and a half, 2 years to completely taper off of maybe 40 milligrams of Valium. And then it was probably about 2 more years before I was way closer to being normal again, where I could actually say I started to feel like my old self. So that's a 4-year timeline there. That's not great. Now let me elaborate, because the first 2 years of tapering is just hell. No matter if you do it in 6 months, 2 months, 2 years. I don't recommend taking longer than 2 years. I think anything longer than that, we probably have to reevaluate some things here. So tapering is hell for 2 years. And by the time you're getting down to maybe a 1 to 2, 3 milligram of Valium, I'm going to use Valium for an example because that's very low at that point, you really start to feel different. At that point, you're not having so much of the chemical symptoms and the chemical throes of, the ups and downs of the chemical withdrawal. At this point, it's just sort of a uncomfortable, steady, anxious hum that you find yourself in. It's not a pleasant place to be, but it's not, daily panic attacks and just all the chemical stuff, ringing in the ears, metallic taste, all that stuff. So you go through what I call a lull period when you first come off, and that's quickly, for most of us, that quickly subsides, and then we have a increase of our old symptoms again, which can be very can make you really nervous, because then you think, oh my god, I started to feel better and now I'm getting worse again. But even that goes away. So there's a little bit of residual that comes, but then you're just sort of left with mostly that pre-existing stuff, and you're still shaking off the chemical hangover, so to speak, from the benzo for about the next year or two. This is after coming off. So I would say after you're off a benzo, if you're on a lower dose, say 6 months use on maybe half a milligram of Ativan, then surely within 6 months or so you'll start feeling better. I think an easy rule to say is if you took whatever length of time you took the drug for, you could kind of say that may be about what you're looking for in recovery. So if you took it for 2 years, then it may take you a couple years to heal. So that's the timeline. Of course, as I always push, if you exercise and you're disciplined with your routine, your recovery, doing exposure therapy daily, exercising daily, you will greatly increase your speed of recovery. Can meditation help with benzo? Absolutely. Absolutely. But the hard part about meditation is when you first start doing it, it has almost a counter effect. The second you sit down, you say, okay, I'm going to try to stop thinking. I'm just going to kind of try to relax and just observe my thoughts. And usually what happens, your thoughts start going crazy at that point. They're jumping everywhere. You're being flooded with so many thoughts at that point. And it seems a little bit crazy. You go, well, why would I want to do this? What's the point of meditating? I'm thinking more than ever now. And of course, the point is to get past all of that, to break your identification with these thoughts and achieve a sort of peaceful, balanced state that will arise from underneath all those thoughts. And that is a factual place. So my advice would be start meditating lightly, which you have to do anyway, really. Meaning, don't sit down and say, I'm going to sit here and meditate for an hour. No, start with 5 minutes. Start with 2 minutes. Just see if you can sit there for 2 minutes. and it's not about not thinking. I'm not saying sit here for 2 minutes and just have no thoughts, because that'll be almost impossible, especially at first. But it's sort of like lifting weights. You don't get strong overnight. It's a process. So for the first couple minutes, for the first say couple weeks, if you start to meditate, just see it as a process of getting conscious. Just start reaching a place where you can sort of meditate, reach a peaceful, relaxed state if possible, as much as possible when you're going through benzo, of course. I say that. And then just start observing your thoughts and start allowing those thoughts to not have power over you, meaning break your identification with those thoughts. And with benzo, of course the main thought is ruminating on our health. Am I going to get better? Am I going to get better? Am I going to get better? The first thing you got to do is break your identification with am I going to get better? See the point. Yes, you're going to get better. Could you not get better? Sure, that could be a point. But now what? Now we break this cycle of identifying with the fear, with that incessant thought of, am I going to get better? And of course, that thought's tied to many other thoughts. It's tied to thoughts about ourselves and thoughts about our future and our family. And, it's tied to many things. So we want to break the identification with the very notion that we are wounded and we won't be healed. So once you start doing that, it's like cutting the strings to these things that keep us sort of ruminating and tied to this OCD-like thought process. So meditate lightly. It has tremendous benefits. There's countless studies out there to show you the effects of meditation on everything from anxiety and panic and trauma and depression to personality disorders. I mean, meditation is the basis of essentially dialectical behavioral therapy and even to some degree cognitive behavioral therapy, which are two of the biggest, some of the biggest therapeutic modes in all of psychology right now. Do people that cold turkey have a harder time healing? Not necessarily, but what happens is the relapse rates are very high because it's just too traumatic. So meaning if there was no way you could relapse, if I took someone that came off it in 2 years, like myself, or if I took someone that went through a drug rehab and was ripped off the drug in, let's say, 2 weeks, and then we speed up 2 years down the road, if both of those people went and did everything, accurately, meaning exposure therapy, exercise, all these things that I talk about that facilitate healing, not just waiting to heal, but actually actively participating in your healing, then they both will achieve a similar state. They should. The problem with fast taper again with a cold turkey. First off, it's dangerous. So you don't want a cold turkey. I'm assuming when people are asking this question about cold turkey, they just mean coming off in 2 weeks feels like cold turkey. Sure. Other than that, you don't cold turkey benzo ever. But that said, these people have a harder time because, again, the symptoms go up too quickly, they're just too severe, and these people almost always go back on an SSRI or back on a benzo. So, of course, the best taper is a slow, steady plan. Not too fast, not too slow either. That's something nobody talks about, is going too slow on benzo tapers, which I will get into at another time for sure. Meds to avoid during taper? That's what the question is. Are there meds to avoid during the taper? Sure. Sleep aids, right off the bat, which is the one thing you want. The one thing you above everything, I think you want is, please let me sleep. When I don't sleep, my symptoms go through the roof, right? Stress, anxiety, depression, OCD. We start ruminating. We feel negative. We feel run down, and it just becomes a cycle, and you just keep going through it. So sleep aids are bad because they basically act like a benzo. Corticosteroids are bad, like prednisone. I took prednisone at one point when I was going through some bad lower back issues. I hated it. I hated prednisone. God, if you can avoid that coming off, benzo. Please save yourself some suffering. Gabapentin, I've heard good and bad things about that. Personally, with me, I felt like it only increased my symptoms. Gabapentin. And, of course, opiates, too. You want to stay away from that. Opiates are just, if you can, bad news. Which supplements do you recommend for benzo recovery? Supplements. I would have to say fish oil is a really good one. Vitamin D, especially if you can get it naturally in the sunlight, is going to be great for you. Vitamin C, vitamin E. Take your vitamins. Oftentimes it's hard to eat, so I would recommend taking those naked juices, the vegetable juices, like they have the mean green and some berry juices. Those help a lot, especially, because you don't want to be sitting there all day not eating, and that just runs your body down further, and that can actually have effects on your mind and your symptoms directly. Yeah, so that's pretty much it for supplements. Not a ton. You don't want to overdo it. Just multivitamins. Make sure you're getting your vitamins C, D, and E in particular. Get fish oil is great. You can get it in actual fish rather than capsules. That'd be better. Can benzo cause nerve damage? I'm not sure about that. And what do you mean by nerve damage? Benzos change the nerve cells. They organically, change our brain, sure. But there's studies that show that our brains heal and continuously adapt. So I would say probably no more than being an alcoholic, which, yeah. So the answer is yes and no. Depends on how long you're on it and all those other factors we talked about. But the thing to remember is your brain is super adaptable, and most of that damage, if not all of it, will heal. So don't ruminate on, I've done damage and I'm never getting better. You don't know that. Most likely not. And there's been, let's go on a limb here about brain damage. There's been so many cases of people going through severe brain damage, and they go on to live mostly, if not completely, normal lives. There's been cases where people were born with one hemisphere of their brain, and they still were able to function and do normal. So, in the bigger picture of neurology, you really shouldn't worry about that, is what I'm saying. When should I take my dose while tapering? Everyone's different. For me, I had a lot more anxiety in the evenings and had more trouble sleeping, so I would try to wait at one point and take my dosage in the evening. But when I started, I would take my dosage and I'd split it in half, and I would take one in the morning when I woke up and one in the evening. And then toward the end, I just took it in the evening. It's all about you. Where's your anxiety levels? For the most part, though, when you start getting down low, 5 milligrams or lower on, say, Valium, it's all the same. It almost doesn't matter. You just feel like an open scab, and you're just, you just hurt all over. How does healing happen? Do symptoms go away slowly, or do you just wake up one day and they're gone? Well, you don't wake up and one day they're gone. No, they do happen very slowly. But then, almost contradictory, you do find yourself one day just noticing, oh, that's gone. It did seem to just fall off at some point, and you almost didn't notice it. So that's interesting. But usually it's slowly. First things, to go are the more chemical stuff, like tinnitus and metallic taste and severe dissociation and severe depression and all those kind of things. And then what you're left with is, as that stuff starts to go away, you're kind of at the end, you're just left with like social anxiety and sleep problems, I think for the most part. Maybe some negative thinking, depending on how bad you've gotten while you were tapering. If you weren't doing your exposure therapy, if you weren't exercising and getting out of the house, well, then what's left is a very different thing than where you were in the beginning. Meaning you could be left with severe panic disorder or agoraphobia or major depression, and then you have to treat those things as well. But those can be treated, and those will go away too, slowly. I think after about 2 years, I was really like feeling blessed. I was really feeling happier and like, oh, thank God, I'm getting my I've really got most of my brain back at this point. I'm feeling pretty good. I felt like I got out of, some major car accident, and I'm basically okay now. And then, now it's been even 2-3 more years since that, and I feel better than I did before. So, better than I did before taking the drug. How do you know you were healing, and can you give examples? I knew it was healing by what I just said, that these symptoms of the severity of these symptoms and the kinds of these symptoms were starting to go away. And of course, I knew it was healing just for the fact I just knew it. Even when you can't see it, it's happening by getting off the drug alone. Just by not having that drug in my body affecting me, I was healing. Even when I felt completely crummy, it's like an alcoholic or a heroin addict. Not to equate and say this is the same. It's absolutely not. But if you're on a drug like that, say alcohol, and you're poisoning yourself, essentially. Alcohol is a poisoning drug. It's not great for cells. It does a lot of bad stuff to the body. So the less alcohol you take, the less poison you're putting in your body. So right off the bat, there's that. And I knew I was doing better. And as I got lower in the dosage, I felt that chemical effect leaving more and more. And unfortunately, what happens is that pre-existing stuff starts rearing its ugly head. And then you have a lot of other stuff, because it's not just chemical, it's mental, it's cognitive, it's how we perceive the world. It's locked into how negative we've been in this loop for months or years. And now we have to sort of outgrow that. We have to heal from that, So I knew I was getting better when all these symptoms started to knock off. And by the end, my sleep was getting better. I still had anxiety driving and being in Walmart or certain stores. And then that started to go away with exposure therapy. I can't say enough great things about exposure therapy. I mean, it is a horrible therapy. The whole goal is to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation over and over and over again until your body stops storing up these panic, fight, or flight responses. I mean, it's terrifying, but it works, and it works damn good. So life after benzo requires a lifestyle change. That's what I want to end on. Lifestyle change. I can't say that enough. I can't emphasize that enough. Healing, as far as the Powers Manual, quote unquote, my method, it's a lifestyle change. It's not like anything else. It's not like you have a cold, you take a series of antibiotics, and you're better. It's a lifestyle change. You have to change your diet. You have to change the way you approach sleep. You have to change the way you approach your mental health, the way you view yourself, the way, you have to look at 1,000 factors. You have to be educated on benzo. You have to be educated on cognitive behavioral therapy. You have to do exposure therapy. You have to exercise. You have to get out of your house every day. Even if it is to walk around the block, walk to the mailbox, walk around your house, keep moving, and do the hard work. And like I often explain, the hard work is very similar to being, say, in physical rehab after having a bad car accident. And the last thing you want to do is do those exercises that these physical rehab people are trying to have you do. They're telling you need to work out, you need to stretch. They're trying to help you walk. And of course, your muscles and your body just ache and hurt, and it's the last thing you want to do. And I spent some time in physical rehab. And I have a good friend that runs a physical rehab center, and I saw people over time, the ones that were able to come in and, despite the pain, work hard and just have that eye of the tiger determination to get better. These people overwhelmingly did better, no matter what their conditions were, compared to the people with the same conditions or similar conditions that didn't do those things. Those people, of course, had a much harder time healing. And sometimes didn't heal as well. There's a need for rehab during recovery for benzo. Okay, let me say that again. There's a need for rehab during benzo recovery. And again, what is rehab? Exercise, get out of your house, and do exposure therapy. And let me say this, because a few people have criticized me and rated down my videos whenever I mention exercise. Guys, I understand that when you're in the throes, especially the worst of it, you can't exercise. I'm not over here telling you when you're cutting off benzo and you want to die that you should get a bicycle and go biking or join Gold's Gym. I'm not saying that. I'm saying an exercise is any act of physicality when you haven't had it. So walking to the mailbox and back, that's exercise. And you can do that. Even amongst your worst feelings, you can drag yourself out of bed and walk to that mailbox and back. And you might say, but I'll have a panic attack and I get dizzy and my head hurts. And yeah, I know. Yeah, that's part of it. It sucks. No easy way around that, but you got to do it. And you got to do it multiple times. And if you keep doing it, you will see these symptoms start to diminish. And that exercise becomes very powerful because if you just look at the symptoms only related to that exercise, as those start to diminish, it inevitably diminishes overall of all symptoms. Then just your daily level of benzo symptoms begins to diminish. Your brain starts to change. Your brain starts to adapt, and it quits throwing up these irrational fight or flight mechanisms. So get out of your house, walk around. If you could do gardening, if you could walk around your house, do gardening. If you can walk to the mailbox, if you can walk to the stop sign, and then you push it further and further. And then when you drive your car, if you can drive to the corner store, if you could drive a little further, if you could drive on back roads, can you finally drive on the highway? When you go to Walmart, can you stay near the front of the store without too much anxiety? And then you work on walking into the middle of the store and near the back where there's no exits, where anybody, that may sound strange to some people, but anyone going through this knows exactly what I'm talking about. The further you go into a store and you get away from exits, the more that panic alarm in your head starts to go off. But again, evolution made us so brilliantly that we adapt. It wants us to survive. This life force in us wants us to survive. And although it goes wrong, and we have anxiety and panic and these other things, sure, but in it is the instinct to adapt. Meaning, if you keep putting yourself in uncomfortable situations where panic attacks take place, let's say, and there is a need to override that so you can survive, so you can feed your young and facilitate your survival, meaning going out, gathering food, water, working, achieving things. Your brain has evolved to facilitate that. It has evolved that it will reduce the anxiety and panic in favor of you achieving what you need to achieve to survive. I don't know how else to say that any simpler. So you have that on your side. You have that going for you. We have that kind of evolutionary nature insurance within us. But we have to work toward it. We have to help that instinct kind of reclaim itself. So what I'm saying is, if you go out and do an exposure therapy, if you're exercising and you're getting out there in your fears, you will inevitably observe a decrease in those symptoms. Inevitably, if you keep putting yourself in what you're terrified with, it will not become terrifying anymore. You understand what I'm saying? I hope you follow that, because I don't think I did a great job of explaining that. All right, guys. Well, this was a long-winded one. I said when I sat down, said to myself I was going to try to keep it really short, concise, and not ramble, because I tend to just go off so much. But there's so much to be said about this, and I would rather say a little more than not enough. So if you guys have any questions or comments, please let me know. Please help me get this, like the video, and help me get this content out there to people that might benefit from it. And I got the Powers Manual, the book I wrote, which illustrates everything that I did and everything I know that was helpful in having me heal from benzo. So I wrote a book. Some of you have read it. Many of you seem to be getting something out of it. So you can check that out. I also offer a limited coaching, and I've been working with a few people, and they seem to be doing a lot better, and I think that's a great service. So there's links in the description, and let me know what you think, you guys, and keep strong, and you guys, you'll be out of this soon enough. All right, keep your heads up. You'll be out of it, I promise you.